All right, guys. 10 episodes down in season 2 of Young Justice, and there have been so many changes, too many to even talk about. But in this mid-season review, we're going to try. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another Young Justice mid-season review. Similarly to what we did in season 1, we are going to be talking about all the events that have occurred, or at least many of the events that have occurred within season 2, and the halfway point. We're 10 episodes into the second season. Like I said in the intro, a lot has happened. There have been a lot of changes, and in this mid-season review, we're going to try to touch on, many of the important ones, as well as my thoughts, feelings, first impressions about the season in comparison to season 1, how we kind of felt this time last season, and where I kind of think the season is going with some of the characters, the overall plot, and all that sort of thing. I'm going to try and do my best to make this video as concise and short as possible. Like I said, season 2 has been filled with a ton of huge changes, and I feel like I could easily do a 20-minute rant on every character, every relationship change, everything that's happened in the 5-year time skip, the plot points, the plot twists, and everything in between. Like I said before, we're going to try to be as concise with this as possible. I really just want to touch on a few of the major things that have happened, give my personal thoughts, feelings, and predictions as to where I think the second half of season 2 is going to go. So forgive me if I don't talk about the thing that you maybe have noticed your time watching the first half of this season, or if it feels like I missed a major thing. I really just try to consider, some of the biggest things and just touch on those. Without further ado, guys, if you do enjoy the content, you already know what to do. Dropping a like on this video is a great and free way to help out the channel. It really does help out the videos, helps me and helps our community grow, and that makes me really excited. Comment down below what has been your favorite episode within the 10 episodes that we've seen in season 2 so far, and subscribe if you're new here and want to become a part of the ultimate watch party. And speaking of watch parties, if you'd like to watch these episodes in full, we have season 2 in its entirety so far, all the way up to episode 10 on Patreon right now. I'll put a link to that at the bottom of this video. All right, spiels aside, let's get into my mid-season review for season 2. So, season 2, a lot has happened. There have been some major changes coming off the heels of season 1. And, when I think about season 2, I don't know if this is potentially a mistake that I made with starting the season so quickly, or, maybe that's just what it is. But, going into season 2, especially episode 1, and seeing that it was a major time skip, it was a little jarring for me. And I would say that was probably my first impression of this season, is that there were some major changes, and some of them, I guess I should say many of them, are really hard to kind of process at first. 10 episodes into the second season, I'm still processing the fact that Superboy and Megan aren't together anymore. Because looking back at season 1, they were thick as thieves. And, that is just one illustration of the many changes that I feel like have occurred within the second season, or within at least the first 10 episodes that I've seen, that, is kind of hard to accept at the beginning. And I say this because, coming off of season 1, guys, we spent 26 episodes with these characters, and, all of us that were a part of this watch party together, as I watched it for the first time, I really came to connect with a lot of these characters, with Robin and Superboy and Aqualad. And, when I thought about season 2, and, these were predictions that I never stated, but I had my own ideas of where I thought season 2 would start. And, a 5-year time skip just wasn't in that bag. So that was really surprising. And I would say that, throughout my time watching season 2, much of the challenge, I would say, within this season is not only keeping up with the plot and the numerous characters that have been presented in this second season, but it's also, keeping track of, the relationships and how they've changed, with many of them feeling like they didn't necessarily change for the better. Now, obviously, I don't want to take away from the relationships that did progress in a meaningful way. Obviously, one of those relationships being that between Wally and Artemis, that was one that I was hoping ending season 1 would progress in a positive manner, into season 2. And it seems like very much so it has. But I'll tell you guys, no one warned me while I was watching season 1 to not necessarily get too attached to some of these characters, because coming into season 2, you're going to see some major changes with many of these characters. And, had I not become so connected with those characters back in season 1, it might have made the changes coming into season 2 a little more tolerable. But once I got past the jarring aspects of the massive changes that have occurred, I've actually come to like this new season. In a way, you know, with that 5-year time skip, it seems like the writers from season 1 to season 2 have definitely matured in how many of these characters are portrayed. I mean, if you look at Superboy, you know, he's definitely taken on a much more of a leadership role, as well as Robin, who finally got that opportunity to become team leader. I don't know if he became team leader because Aqualad went over to the dark side. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you know, it's still nice to see, as one of the big things that I really wanted in season 1 was to see Robin become that leader, get that leadership opportunity, as we all knew that he was capable of. So coming into season 2, that was something that was actually really nice, seeing him have that mentor role and kind of pass on the knowledge that he learned from his mentors to a new group of heroes. And I guess that's one of the beautiful things about season 2 so far, is the fact that it really does feel like a passing of the baton to new heroes. I mean, you've got Blue Beetle, who definitely, you know, has a lot to learn and didn't have the opportunity to have a mentor like Robin did, and Superboy and all that kind of thing. But I think it also presents fresh blood to the show, while also allowing you to grow and evolve with the characters as they're growing and evolving. And that's something that I really like and appreciate about the way that many of the old characters were written. As they become newer, as they become older in season 2, and new characters have kind of emerged to fill those kind of pseudo roles of master and apprentice, it's been nice to see those same characters who we once saw as having a lot to learn, now being able to pass on a lot of knowledge to some of the rookies and get that opportunity to be in a mentorship role. So I would say overall, my impressions of this season so far has obviously been one that, you know, has been a little bit of resentment about some of the changes. You know, you'd want to see some of these characters so happy, but again, once you kind of get past that, I have been, you know, really enjoying some of the changes. And this show, you know, specifically the second season, has definitely presented a massive tonal shift in terms of how many of the characters, the plot, the story has been presented. Whereas season 1 was very lighthearted, season 2 definitely has gotten a lot darker, a lot more mature, and it feels like the stakes and the risks are as high as ever. Now, speaking of relationships, I think that's one of the biggest things that has changed in this season, is obviously the relationship between many of the characters. And while I could touch on every character that has changed and how they've changed, obviously I just want to touch on a few of the most significant ones that I noticed. Obviously, one of the most significant being that with Wally and Artemis. If you were to have told me back when I was watching season 1 that Wally, of all heroes, would have quit his role as being a part of the Young Justice team to go to college and just kind of be a normal guy, I would never have believed you, because during my time watching season 1, it almost never felt like that was even a possibility, with Wally being so obsessed with his trinkets and his souvenirs from each of his missions and the opportunity to be a hero. It never occurred to me, not even for a second, that Wally would ever assume the role of stepping back into a civilian role. Not only would he step out of into a civilian role, he would also be dating Artemis, which you know, I guess was the only aspect of season 1 into season 2 that was very predictable. That's the only aspect that felt like, you know, now seeing it in season 2, it feels like that made a lot of sense. I'd say that was probably the first moment of joy that I witnessed in season 2, was seeing Wally and Artemis together and enjoying their life and kind of being out of the hero game. Now, one thing I would love to see when it comes to that couple is I would love to see them, you know, explore the reason why they got out of the hero game a little bit further. Now, obviously, you know, they did mention it briefly in one of the episodes where it felt like they were both leaving the role of being a part of the Justice League, part of Team Justice, you know, for just pursuing college and stuff. But I hope that it's deeper than that. And obviously, don't spoil it for me. Maybe they'll reveal it, maybe they won't. But I'd hope that it would be a deeper reasoning for them leaving the team than just wanting to pursue normal lives. And if that's what it is, then hey, good on them. That's fine by me. But I would love to know, you know, I feel like it would be deeper and more meaningful if there was a reason why they were leaving and pursuing lives outside of being a hero. Maybe a mission that went bad, maybe a moment where one of them almost died and they came to a realization that they would rather, you know, be together and not be in the hero role than to not be together at all. But again, if the reason is they just wanted to pursue college and do the whole civilian thing, then that actually still makes sense to me somehow. Now, one thing that doesn't make sense to me is Superboy and Megan. While the reasoning of them not being together, it actually makes a lot of sense, You know, it's one that I wasn't expecting. As I said before, coming off of season 1, I never really expected that there would be any sort of relationship issues between them. It seemed like they were so strong, so set in their ways of being together, that the idea of not being together just seems so foreign to me. So I would say of all the relationships in season 2 and all the changes that we've seen, that definitely has been the one that to me has been the most challenging to kind of settle with, and one that I hope finds some sort of resolution within the second half of season 2. And there was a moment in season 2, I think episode 7 or 8, when they're in the ship together and they're having a conversation, and that's when we finally get the reveal as to why Superboy broke up with Megan. You know, there was a moment that felt like they could potentially start to work it out a little bit. And obviously that moment came and went, and she has since been continuing to use her powers. But now that she has used them on someone that was actually a friend, you know, even though it was a mistake, it still, I think, is going to have massive repercussions on how Superboy views Megan going forward. This isn't one of the things that I really wanted to touch on too much, but I'll touch on it briefly. The evolution of Megan. We always knew Megan was an incredibly powerful character back in season 1. I mean, episode 14, I believe it was, the one where they go on the simulation, was a prime example as to the untapped potential of Miss Martian. But coming into season 2 and finding out that she's been using her abilities to not only, like, you know, extract information from people despite the side effects, but that she didn't care that what it was doing to them at all. This is kind of one of the biggest things, to me at least. It's one of the things that I feared the most when it came to a character this powerful, as, you know, with something that we've seen in X-Men with the Phoenix, is a character, you know, characters that have mental abilities, you know, they always end up being a little too powerful, almost to the point of dangerous, to where if they ever got out of control or they got out of line, there's really very little that anyone on that team could do to stop them. And that's where I kind of feel like Megan is getting. Now, I don't think, you know, we'll get into further predictions, but a brief prediction I have for Megan is I don't think that she'll become a villain, or at least I really hope she doesn't become a villain. But, you know, I do think that it's going to get to a point where an intervention is going to have to happen in order to get Megan back on the side of doing the right thing and using her abilities for good. Because as of right now, with her having these what feels like unlimited abilities and untapped potential, you know, it definitely feels like she has kind of lost her way a little bit, and she's out here making decisions that are kind of reckless, and in a way almost not necessarily villainous, but kind of edging on villainy, to where it really just takes one bad decision and she could do what she did to Aqualad, and, you know, and that's going to have lifelong repercussions for, you know, her role on the team and how people view her. And while I don't think she becomes a villain, I definitely, if that were to happen in the second half of season 2, maybe something occurs, you know, maybe they have a big blow up or something, I could definitely see it being where Megan does become a villain. I don't think that's going to happen, but if that were to happen in the second half of season 2, it really wouldn't surprise me. Now, in the realm of talking about big changes, obviously one of the biggest ones, one of the lingering questions about, you know, this second season in terms of characters has to center around Aqualad. Now, starting off the season, we found out, which at the time for me, guys, was a big reveal, was the fact that Aqualad was not only not a part of the team anymore, he was a part of the dark side. I mean, he really pulled an Anakin on your boy. Like, I was never expecting your boy Anakin to become a part of the dark side. And when that moment happened, oh guys, I mean, I was like in middle school at the time. I mean, I still lose it when I think about that. It was one of the biggest plot twists of my time. But, you know, moving on to now, we're seeing Aqualad. Back in season 1, he was this impalpable leader. Like, he was incredibly, you know, strong and sturdy. He was the best one for the role. So to see him become a part of the dark side is not only one of the most interesting aspects of season 2, but it's definitely one of the most worrying, as not only is he has incredible strength, but he's also has a brilliant mind. I mean, the guy is smart. It's what allowed him to be able to lead successful missions with multiple different individuals. I mean, he understood their talents, their strengths, but most importantly, he understood their weaknesses. And while, you know, it is inevitably revealed later on in the season that Aqualad is a mole, and it's back to the mole situation. He's working for the good guys against the bad guys while also portraying a bad guy. It presents a lot of risky scenarios. One of those being could Aqualad be in a situation where he actually does find himself caring for his father, and when push comes to shove, he would rather side with his father than side with the good guys, and I think that's kind of what you would expect from a role in which you find yourself being a double agent and infiltrating a society or infiltrating a community, is you almost are unable to discern between the two, and over time you almost find yourself connecting with that community, even though your main mission at the time was to infiltrate them in order to destroy them. In terms of character predictions, Aqualad is the one that in season 2 has me the most worrying, because I think when Wally had that discussion with Nightwing at the end of, I think it was episode 9, he brought up a lot of good points. And one of those points being, is it possible that Aqualad could be a triple agent? And as soon as he said that, it has become something that I can't seem to let go of, a possibility that very well could exist. I never thought it would be possible that Aqualad would betray the team, and while it does seem like it's all been a part of the plan, there is still a side of me that struggles to trust Aqualad again. And again, while it's been confirmed that he is still on the side of good, I still kind of worry that in the end, he's still going to have to prove himself in a way that's going to have lifelong effects, maybe even deathly effects on someone on the team. And again, this is just my prediction. This is just what I feel like is going to happen. While he has proven himself by destroying Mount Justice and all that, I feel like somehow, some way, with Artemis kind of now being a part of that infiltration, I feel like somehow, some way she's going to get discovered, and Aqualad's father is going to place a responsibility on him to actually kill her this time, or he's going to do it himself, and Aqualad is just going to have to stand there and do nothing. And obviously, as you can imagine, Kid Flash is not going to be down with that. And I could see Kid Flash going dark side and making it his lifelong mission to destroy Aqualad, despite everything that they've been through and despite everything, their past relationships. It doesn't matter. I think when it comes to Artemis, Kid Flash will definitely put Artemis above anyone on that team. So that kind of has me a little worried about the future of many of the characters. And I would say, of all the characters, I would say those are probably some of the biggest. Obviously, you have Garth. That was a big reveal in the first half of the season. Absolutely blew my mind. When I watched season 1, and I think back to our time watching those episodes, I knew something was going to happen with Garth, but to actually see it and actually see that moment where he is now Beast Boy, I mean, that's one that I still can't seem to gather. Then, in terms of other characters, you got Blue Beetle, who appears to be a big part of that. I won't touch on the Blue Beetle aspect too much in this mid-season review, because I really just, the story I find to be a little, I don't know, something about this season feels a little convoluted. And I think it's just, I'm waiting for more of the pieces to kind of unfold before I make final judgments about the quality of the second season in terms of story. It's not to say that it's bad. I just think I don't have enough of information of this season to really make a qualified judgment on what I've seen so far. I will say this though about the story, guys. I know I'm bouncing around a lot of different places, going from characters to now story, it's all connected, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that I'm waiting for the moments to feel a little bit more connected. Because when I think back to season 1, one of the things I loved about that season was that it all made sense. There was one enemy, there were a group of heroes, good versus evil, and in that you had a kind of conspiracy theory about a mole, and the whole season, the whole half of the season, second half, kind of centered around the idea of like, who's the mole, who's the bad guy, who's betraying the team. And I really like that. As someone that really is big into crime thrillers and the classic whodunit, I really like this idea of knowing that there's a killer out there, there's a traitor, there's a mole, this and that, and not really knowing who it is, but knowing that you've seen them, but you don't know who it is yet. And that's what really drew me to season 1, and what I really loved. I love crafting theories about how things are going to play out with certain characters, and so that was really fun. But when it comes to season 2, there's a lot that I don't fully understand. There's an impending invasion. You've got the Justice League, who's kind of, they're kind of off world now. Haven't seen them not once the rest, since they left back in episode 2 or 3. You've got a bunch of new characters. You've got a whole timeline thing where Bart Allen has gone back into the past in order to stop an impending dooming future, and somehow that centers around a very dangerous Blue Beetle. And it's all, I guess when I say it that way, it actually does make a lot of sense. But again, I do feel like there's many pieces that I still don't have about the final season that I'm hoping I'll get in the last 10 episodes. But so far, I would say, the story, the story is good, but I will say the one thing that's different compared to season 2 is that it's it's just not grabbing me the way season 1 did. And again, I say that's probably because I don't have all the pieces, and maybe when I do, it'll all make more sense. I'll be much more gravitated towards the plot and the characters. But as of now, with all the major changes and so many new characters and a very complex plot, it is having me at a point where I do struggle to kind of stay locked in to the episode so far. But again, it's only been 10 episodes. I do find that a lot of the plot twists have been enough to keep me engaged in the season, but I do want a bit more of that story, and I want a bit more of that, of a story that makes sense to me. You know, I'm a simple guy, you know, and that's why I liked season 1. It was a very simple good versus evil, mole in between kind of plot with some plot twists in between that fleshed out many of its characters. And in this one, it's a lot of, I think, playing catch up, as a lot has occurred over the last 5 years. And now you're in a position where you're just trying to piece the things together. The show isn't outright telling you what's happened all the time, but every episode I am watching, I am getting pieces of the last 5 years that's putting a puzzle together. The funny thing about that, though, is I hate puzzles. All in all, guys, you know, to end my spiel on the story, I will say this. I have enjoyed the story. The story's been good, easily as good, if not better, than season 1. But I'm missing some major components that I feel like could really pull me into the second season that I'm hoping I'll get in the second half of season 2. Whereas this time last season, when you're talking about the halfway point of season 1, I think we had just finished episode 13. We hadn't even gotten to the McGann, you know, IRL or training episode where they went inside her brain and they did a whole simulation thing. I think that was episode 14 or 16, something like that. But this was just after episode 13. And I felt like enough had happened to really pull me into the story. So I was kind of hoping to feel that way about season 2 so far. Season 2 has been outstanding, though. Don't get me wrong. It's been outstanding. I want to see more of that story. And so I think it has me excited to watch the rest of the season in hopes that we'll get a little bit more. Overall, guys, I know I've rambled a little bit. I just wanted this to kind of be an open discussion about my thoughts, feelings, predictions about where, you know, the second season is going to go. Speaking of predictions, though, I've mentioned a little bit about some of the characters. I do think that there's probably a major death or two that we're due for. You know, one that's real. Obviously, the whole Artemis thing, given the fact that she's still alive, doesn't really count. But I do feel like there's got to be something permanent right around the corner. You know, this whole going undercover thing, it can only end one way, and it only ever ends in tragedy. And so, you know, that's where I'm kind of worried. So we'll see how that plays out. I would say that's probably my biggest prediction about season 2. You know, and in terms of Blue Beetle, I don't really know I have no idea what the heck is happening there. I do feel like the whole Blue Beetle thing is interesting. The character is interesting. You know, I've actually come to really enjoy the character of Jaime Reyes, and I hope that we get to see a little bit more of him as the second season progresses. In terms of the other characters, guys, in terms of the rest of the story, obviously we're still trying to figure out what's going on with the light. You had the whole thing with I would say probably what I missed to talk about. One of the biggest things about this second season had to have been the continued search for the real Roy Harper, and obviously that came to a conclusion. It was nice to see that wrap up. Roy was right. He actually found the original Roy. And now everybody can kind of move on. And the original Roy now becomes Arsenal, which I only vaguely remember from the comics. And I'm curious to see how that progresses, if he'll join the team or kind of go and do what the old Roy did back in the day, where he goes on his solo missions and kind of does things on his own. But again, it's one of those things. We'll just have to see how that plays out. Overall, guys, season 2 it's been interesting. I would say it's been hard. It's been a hard pill to swallow so far with the changes and the time skip. It's been fun at times. It's been confusing. It's even after episode 10, it remains to be confusing. And I think I'm more anxious about the state of many of its characters than I was back in season 1. Season 1 very much felt like, you know, kind of a fun, lighthearted, but action-packed, kind of more kiddish show, right? And you move into season 2 and it very much feels like this is a bit more adult. You know, to me, it feels akin from going to from Avatar: The Last Airbender to going to The Legend of Korra. That's the best way I could describe these 2 seasons. And despite how you feel about TLOK or ATLA, you know, which one's better, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm really referring to is what I feel to be the maturity changes that came from both shows. Because I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender and immediately went to The Legend of Korra. This year, And I felt that The Legend of Korra, in my opinion, was just a bit more mature, which made sense given the time that had passed from the creation of one to the other. And so that's kind of what I feel like is with season 2. It feels like it's just a lot edgier. There's a lot more at stake, and they're not afraid to take risks, when it came to writing the season. So I'm curious to see what big twists I'm in for. I don't know if you guys, I can't stand any more jaw-dropping thumbnails though, with me just being like, I don't know. I don't know. But either way, guys, this has been a great season so far. I've actually really enjoyed it. Obviously, there's some things that I would love to have seen a bit more by now, but again, we're only halfway through the season. We still got 10 more episodes to go. Be on the lookout for another episode. Either it might be dropping today, later on today. I'm hoping to get this up by the weekend. So if you're watching this, hopefully it's the weekend and I was able to achieve that goal and get this video up. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for the love and support. Again, Patreon link down below if you want to watch the full uncut versions of all these episodes. I know I cut them up a lot for YouTube. It's just kind of is what it is. But, if you guys want to watch the uncut versions, Patreon link is down below. Would love to have you guys join us over there. And thank you all for those of you who are on Patreon. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Whether you're a free member or a paid member, any support you guys offer to me really means the world and allows me to continue to make content that we can all enjoy together, about things that we all enjoy together. So thank you so much for the opportunity to entertain you. That is my mid-season review. A great season so far. Excited to see so much more. And I can't wait to see how this whole Aqualad thing pans out. But I have a feeling it's going to be traumatic. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Drop a like on this video if you do enjoy. Subscribe if you're new here. All that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you in the next video.